Genesis, huh? You ready to dive into this one?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking stories that have shaped cultures for centuries.
Yeah.
But I get it. You're interested in more than just a surface level read, right?
Exactly.
So we're treating Genesis less like, I don't know, a theology textbook and more like a fascinating historical text.
Think of it as a window into the human condition.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, exploring those timeless questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? What does it even mean to be human?
And there's no better place to start than the very beginning. Genesis chapters 1 and 2 lay that groundwork with the two versions of the creation story. I've always been struck by how those 6 days of creation unfold. With that repeated phrase, and God saw that it was good.
Right.
It's like this cosmic stamp of approval on each element of creation.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the order always throws me off a bit. Like light before the sun and moon, plants before animals. It makes you wonder, what did that original audience make of this sequence?
That's such a fascinating question. Because you see, that order probably wouldn't have seemed strange to them at all. Their worldview, it prioritized, functionality and purpose over a strict scientific order, right?
Okay.
Light, essential for life, takes center stage first. Then come plants providing sustenance, which, logically precedes animals. It's a story that's crafted to emphasize, divine order. Not so much to be a scientific textbook.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's so easy to impose our modern perspectives on these ancient texts.
Right.
Now, when we get to the Garden of Eden, things get really interesting. This isn't just about a physical garden, right? There's a deeper meaning here.
Absolutely. The Garden of Eden is more of an ideal state of being. Imagine humanity in perfect harmony with nature and in direct communion with the divine. It represents, this idyllic state that frankly we still long for even today. Yeah. But then, something goes wrong.
This is where the story takes that fascinating turn. Temptation, disobedience, the blame game. It's like we're witnessing the birth of the human struggle right before our eyes.
Yeah.
And these flaws, they feel so relatable even after all these centuries.
Exactly. And those flaws, they quickly escalate into the first murder in chapter 4, right?
Right.
Cain and Abel. Brother against brother, consumed by jealousy. Come on. Haven't we all felt that pang of envy, even for someone we love?
Oh, absolutely.
Genesis reminds us that these struggles, they're woven into the very fabric of our being.
It's a stark reminder that some things never change, even after thousands of years.
Yeah.
Now, we hit a part that always, it might seem a bit dry at first glance, the genealogies in chapter 5. I'll admit, I used to just kind of skim over those long lists of names. But recently I started to wonder, why were these genealogies so important to the ancient audience?
These lists weren't just about keeping track of who begat whom. They served a much deeper purpose. Imagine a time when stories, they were passed down orally, generation after generation. These genealogies, they were more than just names. They were a way to connect to the past, to establish a lineage that stretched back to the dawn of time.
And speaking of time, the lifespans of these early figures always blow my mind. Adam lived to be 930. Enoch walked with God, and then he was simply gone. No death mentioned. What are we to make of these incredibly long lifespans?
Those incredibly long lifespans, they weren't necessarily meant to be taken literally. They reflect a different perception of time, a way to connect these figures to a mythical past, a time before the world as we know it.
Okay.
Enoch's story, in particular, invites us to ponder the meaning of righteousness, divine favor. What does it mean to truly walk with God?
It's a question that has resonated with people of faith for centuries.
Yeah.
And just when we're contemplating the potential for this long and meaningful life, we're confronted with the consequences of human failing. The wickedness of humanity reaches this fever pitch, and boom, we have the flood.
Right.
It's like this dramatic reset button for creation.
Well, it's a powerful narrative, and it's found in various forms across cultures throughout history. I think it speaks to a universal fear of destruction and this yearning for renewal. Was it divine judgment? A chance for a fresh start? A cautionary tale about human nature? Genesis leaves the interpretation open, allowing each generation to grapple with its meaning.
So we just left off with a world washed clean, a new beginning for humanity after the flood. But then as we dive into chapter 10, it feels like we're seeing these echoes of the past. We get another genealogy, this time tracing the descendants of Noah's sons, as they spread across the earth.
It's like even with a clean slate, humanity can't help but bring along some of that that old baggage.
It's true.
Yeah, Chapter 10's Table of Nations, and it attempts to explain the diversity of people on Earth, but it also highlights how quickly humanity spreads out, diversifies. It's fascinating, almost as if, like, this drive to forge our own paths, even if it means separating from others, is hardwired into us.
Yeah, and we see that play out again in the story of the Tower of Babel.
Oh, absolutely.
Humanity, united in its ambition to reach the heavens, ends up divided, right, by language. It feels, I don't know, eerily relevant even today, don't you think?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
I mean, we build incredible technologies, connect across continents, but we still struggle with these communication breakdowns constantly.
Right, right.
So do you think that the Tower of Babel, is it a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of clear communication?
It certainly resonates on that level. I think the story highlights how our aspirations, even when they're, well-intentioned, can lead to unintended consequences.
Totally.
And it reminds us that language can be both a tool for unity and a source of division.
It's true.
It's a story about that very human desire to, reach beyond our limits and the inherent challenges in bridging our differences.
Fascinating how these ancient stories can still feel so relevant to our modern lives. But for now, let's shift our focus to a new chapter, and a pivotal figure in the Genesis narrative, Abram, who later becomes Abraham, right?
Right.
Chapters 12 to 15 introduce us to this man, chosen by God for a monumental purpose.
Abram's story is the beginning of a legacy, a promise that unfolds over generations. He is tasked with being the father of a great nation, inheriting a land, and ultimately becoming a blessing to all families on earth.
Wow.
It's a covenant, this sacred agreement that lays the foundation for so much of the Bible's narrative.
That's quite a calling.
It is.
But as we follow Abram's journey, we see it's not all, smooth sailing.
Of course not, no.
He faces challenges, makes, questionable decisions, and even finds himself resorting to some, shall we say, creative storytelling to navigate tricky situations.
Ah, yes. The story where Abram passes off his wife Sarai as his sister to protect himself.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that even those chosen for greatness, they're still flawed individuals, capable of making mistakes,
Yeah.
acting out of fear. But what's striking is that despite Abram's flaws and those moments of doubt, God remains faithful to his promise.
Which brings us to the covenant God makes with Abram in chapter 15.
Yes.
It's this pivotal moment that sets in motion a chain of events with far-reaching consequences. So what is the significance of this covenant, not just for Abram, but for the entire biblical narrative?
This isn't just a promise. This is a binding agreement that establishes a relationship between God and Abram's descendants. This covenant is the foundation for the future of Israel, the lineage from which Christianity eventually emerges.
Wow.
It's a testament to God's faithfulness and his willingness to work through flawed individuals to bring about his purposes.
It's amazing to think that these ancient stories hold such profound significance for so many people. But let's be honest, Genesis isn't all covenants and divine promises, is it?
No, not at all.
It's also full of messy family dynamics,
Oh, tell me about it.
starting with the complications that arise in Abram's own household.
Absolutely. Chapter 16 introduces this whole other layer of tension when Sarai, unable to conceive a child, she takes matters into her own hands. She offers her maidservant Hagar to Abram as a wife, and Hagar gives birth to Ishmael.
Right.
It's a story that explores the complexities of desire, power, and the pain of infertility.
So we left off with Abram's family, and man, are things tense.
Yeah, talk about complicated family dynamics.
It really is a good reminder that even in the midst of, this grand divine plan, human relationships, well, they can get really messy.
Absolutely. And the story doesn't shy away from it. All those raw emotions, the jealousy, the resentment, and that deep primal desire for a child.
And then just when you think the situation couldn't get more tangled, Sarah, whose name is now changed from Sarai, she miraculously gives birth to Isaac. Like, it actually happens.
Right. Just as God promised.
Talk about a testament to the power of hope, huh?
It is. And to the faithfulness of God to fulfill his promises even when circumstances seem, impossible.
It's true. But, it kind of adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
Oh, it totally does.
To an already complicated family tree.
It's almost like the story is saying, even when miracles happen, it doesn't erase human nature.
That's a good point. We're still left grappling with those flaws, the insecurities, the challenges of, just existing alongside people who are different from us.
Exactly. And that's a theme that continues to echo throughout Genesis. You see this rivalry that's established between Sarah's descendants, Isaac's line, and Hagar's, which is Ishmael's line.
Right.
And it kind of foreshadows centuries of conflict,
Hmm.
and raises all these questions about identity, belonging, the lasting consequences of choices we make.
Yeah. It's this stark reminder that even our family histories can be marked by division, discord. But even amidst these challenging stories, we also come across stories of resilience, right?
Mhm.
Forgiveness, unexpected redemption. Which brings us to Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's a guy who goes through the ringer.
Talk about a character arc. Joseph's story, it spans from chapters 37 to 50, and I think it's one of the most emotionally resonant in all of Genesis. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned, you name it, he faces it. Yet, through it all, he maintains his integrity, this remarkable capacity for forgiveness. It's really quite something.
I mean, I'm always amazed by how he handles those situations.
Mhm.
He could easily just become bitter and vengeful, but he doesn't. Instead, he uses those experiences to grow in wisdom, in compassion. It's really remarkable.
He really does embody that potential of the human spirit, and not even to just endure hardship, but to emerge from it even stronger and more compassionate. I mean, remember those dreams he had as a young man? The ones that sort of foreshadowed his rise to power?
Oh, yeah.
Those dreams, I don't think they were just about ambition. They were about purpose. And Joseph's journey reminds us that even in those dark times, right? The darkest of times, there can be this higher purpose at work in our lives, even when we don't see it.
And it's incredible how those dreams, the very things that cause so much conflict and jealousy, they become the key to saving his family and even an entire nation, right? From famine. I mean, that scene where his brothers come to Egypt, desperate for food, and they don't even realize they're bowing down to the brother they betrayed.
Oh, I know. Talk about dramatic irony.
It's amazing.
The tension in that scene, it's palpable, but what I find truly remarkable is how Joseph orchestrates their reunion. He doesn't just immediately reveal himself. He tests them, he wants to see their character, see if they've changed, and then ultimately reveals himself in this gesture of just overwhelming forgiveness, compassion.
It's incredible.
It really is.
To experience that level of betrayal and then offer that same level of grace, it really makes you wonder, what would it take for us to do the same?
Yeah.
You know, to offer that kind of grace to those who have hurt us.
It's a question worth sitting with, isn't it? I think Joseph's story challenges us to confront our own capacity for forgiveness, to recognize that potential for reconciliation, even in those relationships that seem, the most fractured. Because sometimes healing and restoration, they can emerge from the most unexpected places.
Joseph's journey really is a testament to that power of hope, resilience, and that possibility for transformation. His story, like so many in Genesis, offers these timeless lessons about family, faith, the complexities of just being human.
And as we come to the end of our deep dive into Genesis, it never ceases to amaze me how these stories, written so long ago, can still resonate so deeply with us today.
It's been quite a journey. I know I'm going to see Genesis in a whole new light.
That's wonderful to hear. And I would encourage you and all our listeners to revisit these stories too, with fresh eyes, an open heart, as you reflect on the lives of Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, Rachel, Leah, Joseph, all his brothers. Think about what their experiences, their choices reveal about our shared humanity. What echoes of their stories do you see in your own life? What choices will you make in your own journey as you navigate the complexities of family, faith, and being human?